Hello Hastings, I'm Tom Wright here at the American Legion, here to bring you some history, some very important history right around Veterans Day on the 1st Special Service Force. It is an elite unit that served in World War II made up of American and Canadian commandos, and 5 of those commandos were right here from Hastings. I spoke with Ed Ribness, the past commander of the American Legion, as well as the 1st Special Service Force Association's president, Cindy Hofeld, whose father also served in the unit. Let's start with the unit as a whole with you, Cindy. I understand you're quite the historian on this group, quite knowledgeable.
Some people say I am, but well, I've been going to reunions for 20 years, bringing my children and my husband. Every year we meet first in the United States, alternately in Canada, because it was a Canadian-American group where 900 from each country met for training in Helena, Montana. And it was a very secret group. It was started by our president and Winston Churchill. And
I understand they painted the trains black so that they didn't know where they were going.
Right, and the Canadians got off in kilts and their bagpipes, and they still to this day march into their memorial service with bagpipes but the Americans were laughing, how can you fight in kilts, etc. But so that's kind of their funny story. But a lot of the old buildings are still out in Helena. We end up going out there. We've been there many times for different reunions. So anyway, there were 1,800 of them. They were told when they signed up that they most likely would not come back because they were basically a suicide mission. And their first goal was to go blow up the hydroelectric plants in Norway because they didn't want the Germans to get a hold of those for power. But that got kiboshed because the Norwegians took care of it themselves. So they did some things up in the Aleutian Islands, but most of their battles were in Italy and France.
In Italy and France. Mm-hmm. And I understand some pretty crazy battles, to put it mildly, with climbing some mountaintops and going up cliff sides that the Germans were not expecting.
Absolutely. On Mount La Defensa in Italy, the Germans had a stronghold there for, I believe it was 6 months. And so what my dad's unit did was they had 3 regiments. 2 were going to come up the side of the mountain where the Germans, this way, but there was a sheer cliff. So he was in the 2nd regiment, and in the stealth of night, they climbed up, and then they kind of came over the top of it. The Germans were up in a bowl on top of this and surprised them. And they figured it was just going to be the bloodiest of battles, but they took them in just a few hours.
Wow.
And my dad was actually injured up there.
And that's where your dad was injured.
Yeah.
Okay. And your dad's name?
Ted Johnson. He's
Ted
from
Johnson.
South St. Paul. He was from South St. Paul originally.
Okay. Wow. Ed, let's get into our 5 guys from Hastings that were in this unit.
Well, the first thing I was going to tag on to Cindy here a little bit. They were predicted that it would take 3 days
At least,
to take that mountain. They took it in 3 hours.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really amazing.
Yes, it is.
Tell us about the 5 men from Hastings
Okay.
That's just crazy. 5 men out of 1,800.
From such a small town. I even put it out to the board saying, do you know of anywhere else in the United States and Canada where 5 men came from the same small town and nobody could?
Right.
So I just think that's really unique.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they didn't join together. They didn't even know.
Didn't know each other. Yeah.
No. I'll read their names off here for the people, because I'm sure a lot of Hastings people know them. 2nd Lieutenant James Moore, he was killed in action. Francis Brooke, Dale Hamilton, and John Hankus, who everybody I think knows, and George Hill. Those are the 5 men.
Wow. And so they were among that group, fighting in the Aleutian Islands and in Italy, in the mountaintops in Italy. Ed, what kind of stories did you hear from our Hastings, from John Hankus? I understand you and John were fairly close.
Yeah, we're good friends, and how this all came about, it was John Hankus' funeral, and we came back to the Legion here. They were going to put on a luncheon for them. And I was coming in the door, and Jim Johnson, who some of the people know as Juice, but anyway, he was coming up the steps here, and he met me right about in this area. And so he says, come over, Ed. I said, okay. So then he asked me if we'd be willing to take on this project here of keeping all this memorabilia in a safe in a place. And we said, well, I'm positive, because after I heard about the story a little bit and everything, I thought it'd be a great idea and the Legion would go for it 100%. Well, Paul Fletcher, who was the commander at the time, I called him over and I told him the story and everything, and Paul was all for it. So then in the meantime, Paul had ended up his term, so now it's Jim Lehman is our new commander. But I worked with both of them on this project also, and they were both a lot of help. Jim is still working with me on it. But so we took this on, and I think we got a hold of Cindy, and she brought her daughter down, Trish, and her son Travis, and then we got the Hamiltons, and we got Weber, and we got all the families here, you know. And so we had meetings, and I think we must have probably had 10 meetings, didn't we? Different times, trying to line this thing all up. And we did, and then we contacted the Hastings Veterans Home and asked them if they would build this display case, or shadow box, we called it. And they said, yeah, they'd be happy to, you know. And so we had them build it, and we got all this memorabilia. I had it in my house for how long? Trying to maneuver around it all the time. But then when we finally got the case built, and I went several trips out there to look it over and make sure everything was up to specs. And they were, as you can see, they did a fantastic job. So my hat's off to those guys out there. But that's how it kind of came about. And,
there was also a dedication of the room over there now called the Hastings 5 Gold Room. The different family members brought down their memorabilia, and so there were tables around where everybody could see some of their things.
Yes.
My dad's jacket is up at Fort Ripley, Camp Ripley, and one at Hamilton's is too, and so even their curator came down and brought that stuff down. So
yes.
Wow.
it was really neat.
We had just a terrific turnout. I think there was over 200 people here. So we were loaded in it. There wasn't a lot of publicity about it. It was just kind of word of mouth thing, and it just went over real big.
Wouldn't have happened without Ed, though, because he really took charge of everything. And
Yeah, it sounds like it. I heard you were the driving force behind making this happen.
He was.
Yeah. I'm not looking for any accolades.
No, I know, but you really did.
Well, you're going to get some here.
Yeah, you
Oh,
are.
all right.
You
Okay.
are.
I appreciate. Thank you. But anyway, it was quite a day, and they had so much equipment. Well, she brought down a truckload, and they're from Camp Ripley, and we had Emma Klobuchar sent her military liaison man down there, and sent the letter down there, which is on the board. And she's busy with her campaigning right now, so she couldn't come. But she was in Washington when John got the medal, and so it's.
The Congressional Gold Medal.
Yeah, and then each of the families brought some souvenirs back. They're hanging on to them pretty tight, which I don't blame them, because they're kind of special. In fact, this knife that you see on the display case here, that they're selling right now, if you get an original, they are a collector's item, and they really sell for big money. Somebody told me up to $3,000.
Oh, even more than that
Because
if it's
those
an
are
original.
Custom made for that unit, correct?
Actually, they're a general. He's the one that designed it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So why do I want to tell you what it does?
Yeah.
It's
Well,
kind
the
of.
knife,
It's called the
designed to cut
V42.
both blades, and it's got a place for your thumb on the blade and the handle, where you can thrust the knife and do whatever you want. And then the other end has a pummel, or pummel, on the end of it, and so that was used to
Split skulls.
hit him and crush a skull, put a hole in the skull.
Which, that's a very gruesome
Right,
visual
that's
there.
right.
But hey,
Right.
it is what it
That
is.
is
It's
what it
war.
is.
It's hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
'Cause I understand that was part of their training in Washington. They had parachute training. They had hand-to-hand combat training. Learned how to ski. Learned demolition.
They had
Mountain
every
climbing.
German weapon.
Paratrooper.
They trained on those.
Oh,
They
they-
used to
yeah.
run up this. It was called Muscle Mountain in Helena, and they had to have 75-pound packs on and run up and down it like 15 times. They worked hard, and even when they were learning to parachute, they jumped out of boxcars. If you went up in the, when you went, they did that a couple times, and you went in the plane, if you wouldn't go, you were out. I mean, you had to be tough, really
Yeah.
tough.
And they were picked for that reason. They
Handpicked.
picked up lumberjacks and farm boys and guys that were strong.
Used to the elements, yep.
Well, I told you about that when they were going up La Defense, I believe. Carried over 100 pounds per man on packs on their back.
Yeah, and it was like this.
It was so steep on the incline, mules couldn't go up that
Right.
steep area.
Wow.
And so I got thinking about that when I was reading about it, and I thought then they had to carry all the dead and wounded down those cliffs, and they made it. But they could do it. They were obliged to do everything they were told.
That's right.
Without question. And they've got a camaraderie with that group.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's amazing.
You go to a reunion and you feel like family instantly.
Yeah.
Oh, I
It's
believe
just
it.
unbelievable.
Something like going through tough times that really bond a
Yes.
group of people together.
And,
Sure.
and it's just they're such a selfless group, And one wouldn't take accolades over the other.
No.
They wanted everybody to get it or nobody. That's just the way their thinking process was.
And yet they were quite the stinkers, when they were training in Helena.
To put it mildly.
They had a place that they would frequent. It was called the Gold Bar, this is the Hastings 5 Gold Room.
Oh, these are the stories you really want to hear here.
Right.
Please
And
do tell, Cindy.
and I'm telling you, they were well known around town. Many of them married women from Helena, even if they were Canadian citizens. But they were a little bit wild.
They were.
Yeah.
They were leading. They didn't know if from one day to the next where they were going to live.
Yeah.
Sure.
So they just lived life to the fullest while they were alive.
And they-
Speaking of which, it was about 1,800 they started with.
Yep.
How many survived? And I think it was a 2-year campaign before they were disbanded. A little over 2 years, correct?
And they were disbanded on December 5th, and there's going to be a climb on Mount La Defense. It's their 75th anniversary this coming December.
No kidding. Wow.
Yep. And that really is the thing I've seen that's affected the men the most. If you're talking to them and you're talking about the day of disbandment, to a man, they have tears in their eyes. Because they came in as Canadians and Americans and Canadians with their kilts, and when they left, most of them didn't even remember which country they were from. And to a man, they will cry about that.
Oh.
It's just really touching.
And why were they disbanded? Because wasn't that before the end of the war?
It was, but not much before, and they were such a small, specialized group, they felt like they just needed these bigger groups. They never lost an inch in any battle. They were the first ones into Rome, too.
Wow. Wow.
Go ahead.
No, the Germans had a name for them because of their camouflage and everything. They blackened their faces and their arms and everything, and so they were called the Germans gave them the name Black Devils, and today that would be politically incorrect, but
Oh, the Devil's Brigade,
the
correct?
Devil's
Yeah,
Brigade now. The Americans always call them Devil's Brigade, but the Germans call them Black
see.
Devils because of the
The shoe polish, black shoe polish, I think it was,
Yes,
that they
yeah.
put on your face for
Camouflage.
night operations.
And they had stickers made up in German where they would sneak in at night and put them on their heads. And what it said in English was the worst is yet to come. So they were pretty terrified of this group.
Yeah, they a lot of times they just go in there and, like Cindy was saying, they would go in there and kill a couple of guys, a couple of Germans, and then leave the rest alone. So the Germans would, when they'd wake up in the morning, there'd be 2-3 of them dead. Then they left the others alive just to spread the panic.
Yeah.
So a lot of mental things.
So you're trained on psychological warfare too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and successful at it.
Yeah.
Wow. Did Ed, going back to our 5 Hastings guys, after they served in that same unit together, were they close afterwards? Did they stay together?
They were good friends. In fact, they were pallbearers for each other after they passed away.
And each other's weddings, too, I
Yes.
understand.
Yeah, they were very close. And John was the last to survive, and that's why he got all this memorabilia. And Washington finally got around to honoring these guys. It took a long time, but always those things take so long. Well, just like we didn't know all this till we started checking into it either,
Yeah.
And so then I said, how come this story has never been told? And that's what got it going.
So we got it going. Well, it's a good thing you got it going. This is a great story to be told. Do a little show and tell here. You were just showing off this Congressional Medal of Honor, the large...
No, gold medal.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Congressional gold medal.
Congressional Gold Medal.
Yes.
There's a huge difference. These are given out at the most 2 per year. George Washington got the first one. Mother Teresa has gotten them. It's not just a military award or a citizen award. It's really reserved for some pretty great people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And all these pictures there in the background, all the people that were in power at the time, John Boehner and Harry Reid, Nancy Pelosi, and McCollum.
Dick Durbin was there.
And Dick Durbin. They're all on the photographs that are on this board. And they're with John and some of them. You know.
Yeah.
But it's
That's
quite
pretty
an affair.
amazing.
And Jim Johnson, he took John out there to receive all these medals, and then John's daughter was also there. You know, so it was quite a. They were pretty honored by it. I mean, John was just dumbfounded. You know, he was so impressed. And there was, I can't remember. I don't know if you did or not, Cindy. How many of those people are left? There's only a few left.
There are 74 living vets, and only 25 of them are originals that trained in Helena, because they did get replacements as they
Oh, sure.
they had 110% casualties, whether it was wounded or being killed. So by then there were rangers, so a lot of the rangers would come in. So there's 25 still original living, 74 total.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing, actually. I'm surprised there is that many.
Out of 1,800, that's pretty good.
That's really good.
We've got one guy that's 98. He still does 100 push-ups. I'm telling you, these guys were just tough.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds like they could make a trip over to Montana and maybe climb a mountain, hit that bar afterwards.
There you go.
Yeah.
Is that gold bar still there?
Oh yeah, we went, and I actually asked the owner. I said,
Okay.
do you have anything from there? So they have something in the men's bathroom that's still original, but downstairs he had pictures framed in his personal office of what it looked like back then. So
Oh.
I got to take some pictures of those.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I'll be darned.
Well, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, Cindy, let's show off. I know just to let people know like how famous this unit was, the Devil's Brigade. I mean, there's a movie based on them here. The Devil's
That's a
Brigade.
Hollywood movie.
You
Yep.
got a Hollywood movie. And Victory Remembered. Tell us about this one.
So this is by Les Owen. He was in the military as well, and he went on. They take Italy tours over there, and now they're going to France too to visit a lot of the places that they liberated. And he's done an entire history, but he also did some of one of the tours. It's beautiful. It's really just beautiful. So, and there are on the. This is many years ago. They did suicide missions on the U.S. History Channel, and then another guy from Canada did. It's called Daring to Die, and that was on the Canadian History Channel.
Okay. Wow. So
And they can all be purchased if anybody's really interested.
right.
Yeah.
And then of course,
Well, this
Devil's
is
Brigade,
a-
G.I. Joe,
Yeah.
Yeah.
collector's item.
Very
there.
hard to find. I found that here in St. Paul, actually. I was really surprised. Once we heard about them, every store I passed, I kind of went in it. I haven't been able to find one since, but they actually have their uniform and their insignia on it and their weapons, so we think that's pretty cool.
That's
Yeah,
very
it is.
cool. Very cool.
Yeah,
Perhaps we can get one of those and put them in a display there, Ed.
That would've
Or
been
on
nice.
the side there.
would have been nice. Good luck
I'd
finding
probably,
one.
probably have to.
Cindy's like, you're not
You're
taking
not
this one?"
taking mine.
I know somebody's got one if they'd ever cut loose with it. I
Yeah, right.
Might be able to
You
put
do,
it in
huh?
there.
Well, I want to thank you both for your time. For those watching that may be interested in more on the unit, I understand there's a website they can find more information.
There is a website. It's run by one of the grandsons of one of the guys, and it's www.firstspecialserviceforce.com.
There we go.
Yeah, not services. A lot of people want to put that S in there. And so these guys were the forerunners to all special forces in the U.S.
And there are also several books out.
Lots of books.
Lots
Lots
of
of
books.
books.
I mean,
Personal histories, yeah.
I'm
just a lot
into
of them.
reading one right now. It's called Super Commandos. And it's a very good book. Your arms will get tired holding it up,
It's a big book.
but it's
More
very
of a
good.
table book, yeah.
It's good.
Well, thank you both again for your time. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you both for all you do for the association and for the Legion and getting this all done, Ed.
Yeah.
And there you have it, folks. Some history, very important history, downtown Hastings from the American Legion. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next time.